Hey guys, what's up? I'm here with a review of the newest movie from filmmaker and filmmaker musician Rob Zombie. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm a pretty big fan of Rob Zombie, not just as a musician but as a filmmaker. I do think his movies are interesting and pretty entertaining. I mean, he has definitely made some movies that are kind of bad. For instance, Halloween 2 is probably a good example. I would say maybe The Devil's Rejects to an extent. I do think that one is is kind of poor. It's kind of a like it's not a I don't think it's like terrible. It's watchable. I kind of like it, but I don't think it's great either. Now, coming from Rob Zombie, who in my opinion has a pretty decent track record with filmmaking and music, comes 31. Now, 31 has been hyped up for a few years now. It was announced in like 2014, 2013, shortly after he released The Lords of Salem, which was a film that I also liked quite a bit. And it's been hyped up, and I decided to sit down and I finally get to sit down and watch it. And it's a film about the days leading up to Halloween. A group of people, a group of carnies to be exact, are kidnapped by a bunch of like crazy aristocrats, and they are forced to fight to the death against a gang of evil clowns in a game called 31. In order to win, they have to survive 12 hours within this kind of arena that's in this like run-down kind of industrial building, and it is a very nice set piece. First, I got to say right off the bat, everything from a technical standpoint, lighting, camera work, music, sound mix, everything's good. I really like the soundtrack to this movie. I will say that while everything is competent from a technical standpoint, I gotta say that the camera work with the zoomed in shaky cam and the lighting with some strobe lights here and there is, especially when it's used during the action, it's way too fast and shaky, much like in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And it really retracts from the quote-unquote explicit violence that was all over the film. I mean, some people I'm sure you guys have heard about this, but Rob Zombie had to cut this film down because it received an NC-17 rating with the uncut version. He had to make 4 different cuts of the movie, and either this shitty editing and like zoomed in shaky cam is because it's just the way it was filmed, or because it was cut. I'm hoping it's because it's cut down. Another thing I gotta say is if you don't like Cher Moon Zombie, then don't watch this one because she's in it just like every other Rob Zombie movie. If you don't like her as an actress, if you don't, like her performances, I'm not going to sit here and say she's a good actress, but I can watch her performances. They're not terrible. So, yeah, she's in this, and honestly, it's not a big deal for me. Other than that, we have a cast of interesting, decently kind of acted characters, a bunch of, foul-mouthed kind of misfit carnies, just on the road, and honestly, none of them are particularly very lovable, but they aren't really annoying or hateable, so that is very good in my opinion. The writing and direction in this film is okay. It's nothing amazing. It's the usual Rob Zombie stuff. Again, if you're not a fan of his writing and direction, although he is a good visual storyteller. The camera work, not the camera work, but the set pieces and stuff like that in his films are usually really, really good. It's no Citizen Kane, but I think the direction and writing is good enough for me. The pacing, I would say, is pretty good overall. The film is really never boring, and it's always interesting to look at, especially with some of the scenes in the kind of industrial complex that they are being kind of hunted down by clowns in. The villains are particularly memorable, especially Doomhead and Father Murder. Father Murder being portrayed by the always great Malcolm McDowell. I mean, I could watch him in just about anything. He is absolutely just fantastic. The gore is good for what there is. Honestly, it's mostly just blood splatter most of the time, and like I said, the zoomed in shaky cam shit. It's that, and I'm gonna attribute that to the fact that this film was cut because it was apparently really gory. The first cut was. And honestly, I wouldn't say this film was particularly that explicit, in my opinion. It's not a great movie. It's unoriginal. It's stupid. it's vile, it's gross. It definitely has some pretty moments that kind of made me feel sick. Not particularly with what is shown, but with what is heavily implied. But does this mean that it deserves the 1 out of 10 ratings I've been seeing it get on IMDb? Like, literally, if you go through the ratings on IMDb, just about every other review will be about a 1 or 2 out of 3. And honestly, the film isn't, this isn't violent shit. This isn't worthy of a rating that low. I think that, like I said before, the shitty editing and the lighting and stuff like that might be attributed to the fact that he had to make 4 different cuts of the movie before getting an R rating. Something else I gotta mention is that one of the clowns in the movie is practically fucking Harley Quinn, which really annoys me. Yeah. On the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu, and 10 being something like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, 31 sits at a 5, a solid 5, I would say. It's really not that bad, in my opinion. I've seen far, far worse movies. I've seen far, far worse in movies, and I've seen far more gory Rob Zombie movies. For example, the uncut version of House of a Thousand Corpses is worse than this R-rated version that they have here, that they have with 31. I really hope we get an uncut version. Zombie has said we are going to get the original uncut version on home media, so I'm looking forward to that. But I've got to say that overall, while it may sound like I enjoyed this film, which I did have a good amount of fun with it. It was fun. I can't necessarily say it's great or really amazing. If you're a fan of Rob Zombie, I would say watch it. If you love 70s exploitation, I would say give it a shot. Especially if you liked House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, his Rob Zombie's films that are literally just him worshiping the 70s. This is another one of those, and this one isn't like this one at least isn't like a remake of a well-known 70s kind of IP, or it isn't just a tribute to like 70s and 80s kind of exploitation slashers like House of a Thousand Corpses or The Devil's Rejects is. This one is more of just a tribute to exploitation as a whole. I really don't know what else to say. I kind of liked it. It was okay-ish. I mean, I would definitely, I did have a lot of fun with it, and while overall it isn't that great, it doesn't deserve the very low ratings I've been seeing it get and a lot of the hate I've seen it get. It's fun for what it is, but I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, except for maybe the uncut version. I'll give that one a watch one day, but I'd probably have to set it at like a 2.5, anywhere from a 2.5 to like a 3. That's where I would have to rate it. It's nothing absolutely amazing, but it is. I would definitely say it's worth a watch, especially if you're a fan of Zombie's other movies. But anyway, guys, this is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.